Let me ask you something. How long does a man live? Is it the number of years that he breathes, or is it the number of years that he's remembered? Because the truth is, a man doesn't die when his heart stops. He dies when his name is spoken for the very last time. I started this podcast, Notes to the Sun, because of a moment, a sacred moment that happened to my family. 37 years ago, we sat with a tape recorder and with my great grandfather, Emmanuel King, who was 99 years old at the time. And we did something that forever changed our lives. We pressed record. Emmanuel King told us about his life and the life of his father, Abraham King, a man born into slavery. A man who, after gaining his freedom, walked from Atlanta, Georgia to Arkansas and ultimately made his way to Boley, Oklahoma. That was 37 years ago. And 20 years after that, I had the privilege of interviewing Emmanuel's son, my grandfather, Walter King, who lived to be 93 years old. Right now, both of those recordings are in my possession, and they are the reasons why I started this podcast. You see, for me, their lives were more than just a story. They were a bridge from the past to the present. And this podcast, it's my way of making sure that that bridge never collapses. This is my way of making sure that the stories and the lessons that have survived within my family for over 200 years continues to be passed down. But I won't wait until I'm 100 years of age to tell my story. No, trust me, my sons, they need to hear these stories right now so they can avoid some of my mistakes and my pitfalls, and hopefully, possibly, maybe mimic some of my victories. I'm your host, KGB, and today we have a very special edition of Notes to the Sun. We will be talking about ancestral worship and the need to remember those that came before us. And at the end of this podcast, I'll be sharing with each of you the greatest gift that you can give a father this Father's Day. But before we chop it up, we'll be kicking things off a little differently today. So instead of our normal introduction, I would like for you to hear a Muskogee Native American song sung by my 99-year-old great-grandfather, Emmanuel King. It is a song about a child being separated from his mother and the hope of finding her again. It is a song about meeting our ancestors after death. It is also a song about former slaves going back to Mother Africa. Let's chop it up.
I have a mother, oh, yonder. I have a mother, oh, yonder. I have a mother, oh, yonder, on the shore. Oh, some pretty bright day, I go and see her. Some pretty bright day, I go and see her. Some pretty bright day, I go and see her on the shore. Oh, thou hallelujah, man, I forgive. Oh, thou hallelujah, man, I forgive. Oh, thou hallelujah, man, I forgive. Man, I know of mine.
Malcolm X once said, history is a people's memory, and without that memory, man is simply demoted to the lower animal. You see, without a people's memory, we cannot evolve. Without collective memory, we are doomed to repeat past pains. And without memory, we forget who we are and what we as a community are capable of. You see, inside of each and every one of you is the DNA of every ancestor that has ever walked this earth in mortal form. So you are not just living your life, you are continuing theirs. Because they were, you are. You are the embodiment of every prayer whispered by your ancestors, every mile walked, every sacrifice made. You are but one branch in your family tree, a tree that has existed since the beginning of time. And one day, your children, they will eat from the fruits of your labor. In West African cultures, we had oral historians called Jali, or what many people refer to as griot. These were advisors to the royal family, and they acted as the living archives of their people. They preserved the nation's history, its genealogies, and its cultural traditions in the form of stories. But they were not just storytellers, they were the keepers of the people's collective memory. They didn't write history down, they carried it in their voices, in their rhythm, and in their spirits. They communicated our stories through poetry and music. And this method of entertaining while educating, it contributed to many oral histories surviving for hundreds of years without ever having to be written down. The Jolly did not want their stories to just inform, they wanted them to transform. But when we were taken as a people and kidnapped from the continent of Africa, our Jali were also taken. Our history was taken. Our collective memory was taken. And when you erase a people's memory, you erase their understanding of their own power and what they are capable of. But the worst part is not that they took our collective memory from us. The worst part is that we don't want it back. Have you ever talked about ancestral worship to a black man or woman in America? If you have, you'll see a lot of folks turning up their noses and cringing as if ancestral worship is a violation of their own spiritual beliefs. But I have to ask you, if remembering your ancestors is not important, then why did the Egyptians go through the painstaking task of carving the names of their ancestors into the stone of their monuments and their temples so that those names could last forever? If ancestral worship is not important, then why is the Bible simply the story of a family outlining 42 generations from Abraham to Jesus Christ? If ancestral worship is not important, then why do royal families trace their lineage back for centuries? And if it didn't matter, here's the $1,000,000 question, then why did they take it from you? Because it is within our memory that we will find our power. It is within our memory that we will find resistance. And it is within our memory that we will find everything that we are and everything that we are capable of. If African American people are to survive, we must regain our collective memory. We must learn the names of our ancestors, and we must be able to speak those names out loud because there is power within those names. Have you ever noticed that when you hear someone's name, a lot of things come to mind? Just by hearing someone's name, you remember their voice. You remember how they look. You remember their laugh, how they sound. You remember their presence. And that's because a name carries vibration. A name carries energy. It carries essence. It carries spirit. Coursing through your veins right now is the genetic material of every single one of your ancestors. They do not just live within you spiritually. They do not just live within you mentally. Biologically, every single one of your ancestors are literally inside of you. So when you say their names, something inside of you vibrates. When you say their names, you don't just remember them, you resurrect them inside of you. You bring their strength back, you bring their wisdom back, you bring their courage back inside of your own body. Call their names. And I promise you, a part of them will answer. The ancient Egyptians believed that a person had many parts to their soul, but one of the most important parts of the soul was called the Ren, or the name. And as long as your name was spoken, the Egyptians believed that you never truly died. And that is why invaders, Arab, Greek, and Roman, that when they invaded ancient Egypt, one of the first things that they did is they carved out the names of its monarchs and they carved out the names of its rulers. And the reason why is because they felt that if you erase their names, you could actually erase their existence and erase them from all of history. But here's the catch. For the Egyptians, you don't get remembered for just living. You get remembered for how you lived. In the Book of the Dead, the scribe Ani, when he is entering the gates of heaven, he prays to God that his name that remains on earth does not stink. And in the Bible, when Jacob was betrayed by his two sons, He cursed them and took away their birthright because, as he said, they had caused his name to stink amongst the inhabitants of the land. For our ancestors, they wanted to make sure that when you spoke of them, you spoke of them with pride, with love, respect, and with honor. Now, I know I took one hell of a long route to get to this point. I promise each of you that by the end of this podcast that I would share with you the greatest gift that you could give your father this year on Father's Day. Not a watch, not a tie, not a phone call that lasts at least 5 minutes. I want you to give him something priceless, something eternal. Sit with him, ask him questions. Let him tell you about who he is, his victories, his mistakes, his lessons. And then your responsibility as a family is not just to remember, but to promise that you're going to pass it on. Promise that you will become the griot of your family, the jolly of your family. Because one day his voice will fade, but his story, his life, the lessons of his life, they don't have to. As long as you carry it within you, as long as you and your family vow to say his name, as long as you and your family vow to remember his life, he will not live forever, but his name and his stories can. This is Notes to the Sun, and I'm your host, KGB, and today's note is real simple. Sit down with your father, your grandfather, or your great-grandfather this Father's Day and learn their stories so that one day they can be remembered and live beyond the beat of their hearts. And then next, teach your children the names of those fathers who are no longer with us, but whose blood they share. Teach them that within the vibration of those names is a song of power, a song of struggle, resilience, faith, and love. Those names will be their light when they are lost, their strength when they are weak, their courage when they are scared, and their wisdom when they sometimes do foolish things. You see, 37 years ago, I sat down with Emmanuel King and I learned his story. And today, he still lives within my heart, and every Monday I call out his name. I played his song for you today because now he lives within each of your minds. You see, I plan to keep him around for a little longer. I want to give a special shout out to my co-producer, my youngest son, Soul. This is his first episode that he's helped me produce, so I want to make sure that we all acknowledge him. Thank you so much, young man. You did a fantastic job. What do you got to say to everybody?
Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Happy Father's Day. You all take care.